Hi there, and a very warm welcome to Season 6, Episode 30 of People's Soup. It's Ross McIntosh here.
In essence, what we were trying to show is that grieving is a very normal, very healthy kind of a process. The way that we are attached to people, the way that we love people, gives us equally the pain of loss and the grief that we experience. And it's really only if we try to shut down or block or move away from that actually things become stuck and more difficult.
Pea Soupers, in this episode I chat with Dr. Anne Finucane and Dr. David Galanders about their brilliant website, mygriefmyway.co.uk. This is a resource developed in partnership with the University of Edinburgh, Marie Curie and Cruise Scotland. Bereavement and grief is something that will come to us all, and we can sometimes find it difficult to manage and talk about at work. The website is designed to help individuals who have experienced loss or are supporting others through bereavement. It offers various materials like real-life stories, worksheets, mindfulness exercises, and poetry. These resources aim to help manage grief through self-directed use or support sessions. Our conversation also touches upon the website's development process, the importance of accessibility, user feedback, and future plans to incorporate more content, including reflections from young adults. For those of you who are new to People's Soup, welcome. It's great to have you here. We aim to provide you with the ingredients for a better work life, from behavioural science and beyond. For those of you who are regular Pea Soupers, thanks for tuning in again. We love it that you're part of our community. Let's scoot over to the news desk. Firstly, I wanted to let you know that I'm in the midst of delivering ACT-based training in a new environment for me, high-performance engineering, which is turning out to be as fascinating and rewarding as I'd hoped. Secondly, I don't know if you've heard, but there's an ACPS UK and Republic of Ireland conference this year, from the 14th to the 16th of November in Manchester. You can find all the details in the show notes, and we'd love to see you there. Our theme is pollination, innovation through connection. So let's crack on. For now, get a brew on and have a listen to my chat with Anne and David. So I want to really just explore further part of the project that you're both working on at the moment, which has an associated website called mygriefmyway.co.uk. And I've been looking at this website over the last month or so, and just like to congratulate you both and the team on this fabulous resource. It's so practical, human, relatable, and useful. So I really want to explore that just for the listeners. So how would you introduce the website to my People Soup listeners?
Well, the first thing, Ross, I'd probably just like to say that the website is based on a project that was funded by Marie Curie, so a 2-year research project, which we completed in January 2025. And so what this funding allowed us to do was to develop an evidence-based online bereavement support resource. So My Grief My Way, it's a website and that can be accessed by people who have been bereaved, or it can be used by people that are supporting others who have been bereaved. So for example, bereavement support volunteers can use the website, signpost their clients to the website, or signpost clients to the worksheets or some of the resources that are within the website. So we see this as something that can be used in two ways. First, in a self-directed way by the person who's bereaved themselves, or in a kind of a volunteer or peer support way, whereby a professional or a volunteer can use it to support the bereavement that they are offering in one-to-one sessions and so on. So that way it kind of gives this kind of a tiered support. It can also be used, for example, by somebody who is waiting for one-to-one support, or for example, if somebody has completed a course with a counsellor counsellor or a peer support group, but still wants to continue with something a little bit more structured, or something that they can, resources that they can check in on, they can use My Grief My Way. It's a free resource, it's openly available, so anybody can use it from any location. The name My Grief My Way actually came from our lived experience group. So we worked with a group of 9 individuals who had been bereaved, a mix of male and females who had different relationships to the person who had died. So some parents, a sibling, a child, well, an adult child, and so on. So, and each of those kind of brought their perspective in relation to what was important to include on the website. So we were really grateful to have that input, which meant that our website materials were focused on what was most needed by bereaved individuals. So if you look at the website, the name My Grief My Way came from our lived experience group, and people liked the fact that it didn't mention the word ACT, so people found ACT itself a little bit hard to get their heads around, but they felt that My Grief My Way, it kind of emphasizes the fact that there are different elements that people struggle with, and the website itself kind of provides a host of materials presented in different formats that help people with different areas where they get stuck in grief. So My Grief My Way encapsulates that. We had a lot of, if you look at the website, you'll see there's a lot of kind of forest imagery, kind of greenery, soothing, relaxing tones. People quite like that. People have commented when they see the website that they find it's actually quite relaxing and calming to engage with. And a lot of that was also based on feedback from our group of bereaved individuals that kind of helped guide us in making decisions around how to present the materials on the website from the start. So when you go onto the website, you'll see there's different sections. There's David and I introducing the resource and giving people a little bit of insight into how you can engage with the website. We had a lot of discussion early on whether the resource would have a structured approach, whether we would recommend that people would work through it in a particular way, or whether we would make it more unstructured. And discussing the different experiences that people have in relation to grief and their different needs. We recognize that people come looking for different things. For some people it might be difficulties with the overwhelming emotions or distress that they're finding it difficult to move beyond. For others it might be isolation and loneliness. For others it might be getting stuck or ruminating on things that were said or were not said in the last period up to the person dying. People come with different things and different needs, and we felt that different elements of ACT could support people depending on what they needed. So we decided, in conjunction with feedback from our bereaved individuals, our advisory group, not to go with a more structured approach and to let people come to the website and take what they needed from it. So the video gives a little bit of an overview of that process. And then when you go into the different tabs, you can see we have real life stories. So we had 6 incredible storytellers. So these are people who had been bereaved and were open to talking about their experiences of bereavement, how it impacted them, what they struggled with, and how they coped. So we interviewed most of these individuals in their own homes, and then we've edited them and created these different stories focused on around different themes where people have problems with grief. And some of our users or participants that use the website as part of the research found these stories really valuable in terms of validating and normalizing their own experiences, but also many people found it helpful to have a sense of community, that there was others that were experiencing some of the similar feelings and thoughts that they were experiencing themselves. People also like the videos because they feel it kind of creates a sense of engagement and warmth, and we like this aspect. I guess we wanted our website not just to be informational or psychoeducational, we wanted also to support people to kind of connect with the material, and many people found that the storytellers, the videos where they tell their stories and describe their experiences, have been helpful in that regard. So that kind of sets the scene, and a lot of people who come to the website will look at the real stories first.
Yeah, I think, Anne, if I could just say thanks for setting out an introduction, and those lived stories are so powerful. It's a beautiful thing, and I take my hat off to I express my gratitude and take my hat off to every person who was willing to share that,
Yeah.
because it's quite an act of vulnerability on their part, and the power of what they share is truly phenomenal. And I love it that you describe it, that people found it gave them a sense of community, that they're not alone. And I wonder, could a resource like this, I don't know if there's a technical name for this in the land of research, but could it be a useful resource for, I don't know how to describe it, but pre-grieving? So, for instance, my mum died after a diagnosis of esophageal cancer, and it was quite a slow decline and quite traumatic for her, obviously, but for people around her. And I think my grieving started sort of post-diagnosis. Do you think these resources could be useful for that sort of scenario?
So that's an interesting thing. It's come up a number of times recently, and pre-death grief, sometimes called anticipatory grief, is a phenomenon. It's a
Right.
thing very common. Sometimes people might be living with pre-death grief for a long time, particularly in conditions like dementia. What you might find then is a series of steps as people lose things, for example, lose parts of themselves, lose parts of their abilities. And each one of those then leads to another nuance of the anticipatory grieving. My sense is that although we haven't focused on that in the mygriefmyway.co.uk website, a lot of the material there will be relevant to people experiencing that. We have recently got some new funding to do some new footage, and we've taken some new film of new storytellers, one of whom speaks of this notion of pre-death grieving. And so we are also going to be looking at creating some new material that's about the passage of time. And in that, it may be possible that we might put some elements that are around anticipatory grieving, pre-death grieving in there. But it hasn't been a strong focus so far. It's mainly we're focusing on the loss after someone's actually died.
And we must give a big shout out to Marie Curie, who funded this project and this.
Well, absolutely. I mean, Marie Curie provided the funding, but they were also one of our key partners in that one of the parts of the research was that volunteer supporters would use the website to support people, and Marie Curie Information and Support Service, the national helpline, was part of the people who helped us to find people who were bereaved and also delivered the My Grief My Way work with their training and ACT that we provided. The other partner organisation we want to start out is Cruise Scotland, and they were also extremely helpful to us. They were part of our steering group. They were right from the very beginning, helping us to shape this in a way that would be, easier to implement it, giving us their considerable experience of supporting people who've been bereaved. And they continue to partner with us as we kind of look towards pathways to implementation.
Wonderful. And I love the way you describe it as a resource that you can dip in and out of frequently. Now, there's a section that I really like about understanding grief. And I just found that so powerful with titles like Intrusive Thoughts, The Empty Chair, Physical Impacts of Loss, Insomnia, Practical Impacts of Loss. It just feels so comprehensive. And I love many things, but one of the other things I really love is that you both are our guide on this website. You're sharing exercises, you're recording audios, and it feels like kind of I get to know you as I go through this, and that feels like a comfort and a community for me as I look through the website.
That was very deliberate because we had the experience of working on a previous bibliotherapy trial where we made a book about irritable bowel syndrome, and one of the things we found from that was that people develop a relationship even with a book, and especially if you have a character in the book that kind of carries someone through the journey. So we were quite keen that all of the skills delivery was either myself delivering that, or one of the things that Anne did a great job of was narrating these poems. The poems are usually around a theme of grief and loss, or around a theme of enacting some ACT principles. And what the poetry does is it makes these concepts not just kind of dry educational, but makes them really heartfelt and really resonant with people. And they can allow themselves to sort of open up to some of the feelings that are there. And so that kind of consistency of the person allows someone to develop a relationship with the website and with us as practitioners and with the real storytellers. So you're right, it feels like there's a consistent relationship, which we know is important in terms of delivery of psychological therapy. And some people did speak about that in the research. They said that that was an important feature for them of having a consistency of person.
And the poetry is, I was so delighted to see poetry included, and having it read to me as well. It's something just so powerful about poetry. I use it in the workplace, sometimes to people's surprise. But I think poetry can give us a way in to touch different parts of us and also recognize that collective experience. So, if I may, I'd just like to ask about the section that's called Ideas and Practice, where you begin to focus in on the ACT skills. How did you devise that?
So we wanted to keep it very simple. We didn't want to but we also wanted to give people sort of a conceptual frame to help them understand what these skills were. So we didn't want to give the 6 processes of the ACT psychological flexibility hexaflex, but we did think that simply talking about the 3 pillars of openness, awareness, and engagement would be a useful, helpful way of helping people to understand, especially because it can then go into that very useful phrase, which I think comes from Act Made Simple by Russ Harris, which is open up, be present, do what matters. In essence, what we were trying to show is that grieving is a very normal, very healthy kind of a process. The way that we are attached to people, the way that we love people, gives us equally the pain of loss and the grief that we experience. And it's really only if we try to shut down or block or move away from that actually things become stuck and more difficult. And so what we were trying to do is to try and teach people a range of skills that will allow them to be, first of all, aware. What is it that you're experiencing? How are you responding to that? What are the consequences of that? So awareness building, openness. How can we help you to be less sort of entangled in what your mind is giving you? How can we help you to be more willing to have the experiences of your body, your mind, your emotions, etc.? And then also pivoting to what matters to you now that you've lost this person. What do you care about? What matters to you? How do you want to live, in the aftermath of this very, very painful loss? One of the very powerful exercises that we introduced in terms of the engagement side of things was this worksheet and exercise around what do you think your loved one would want for you now? And that really helps focus in on, bringing the value of their perspective into the here and now. How do you think the person you've lost would want you to be living now? What would they say is important for you? What advice would they give you? As a way of trying to kind of foster engagement. But to be able to engage in that kind of exercise, you have to also have a lot of willingness and openness. So it's trying to balance those 3 approaches and use those 3 skill set areas to tackle the kinds of problems that get people stuck that are illustrated in the real stories. One of the things about the real stories part, we did before we actually began the website and before we began meeting people to talk about it, we had a 9-month period where we had our experts, by experience, people who'd been bereaved, we had the literature, we had the organizations that deliver bereavement support. We brought them all together several times in a very iterative process. And we did some further research during that time, both literature research and some qualitative research of people doing ACT for bereavement work. And we brought that all together and produced a program theory, a logic model about why do we think ACT would be a good fit for bereavement. And one of the things that did was it highlighted there are some common patterns that we see in people that get stuck. One is the overwhelm of emotions. One is the things you do to block out the pain. One is other people's expectations or your own expectations of how you should be grieving. One is that was quite surprising was people are surprised often by the physical symptoms that come, like illnesses or pain or this kind of thing that come with grieving. And so what was interesting when we had that sort of understanding of what it is that makes people stuck or leads people to be stuck, when we filmed the real people's stories, we didn't ask them to talk about these issues. We just said to them, tell us about your experience of loss. And they talked. And then we were able to then work with the production company and say, let's look for these themes in the interview that the people have given us. And we were able to draw out the themes of avoidance, overwhelming emotion, other people's expectations, because they were just so common in people's experience. And so that's why originally when we thought about the real people's stories, we thought, oh, we'll have each person individually tell their story. But actually, we took this theory that we had about here's why people get stuck, and we were able to use the people's stories to illustrate that. And then naturally, the ACT skills and the understanding grief help to sort of, they give you something to do to try and tackle these common stuckness issues that you see in people who are grieving.
Wow, that's tremendous. And it's great to see how those natural stories fitted
Yeah.
in to your model.
It was testament to how carefully we'd done that earlier work of developing the program theory.
And is there any info or anecdotal experience on how people have found the website?
So we have tested the website with a number of people who've been bereaved that have been referred to us from Cruise Scotland and from Marie Curie. And, for the most part, people are really positive about the website. First of all, which was important to us, is that they find it really easy to navigate and user friendly, because one of the concerns with online support is that, oh, actually, will people be able to access it and use it? How easy will they find it? So it was really reassuring that people found that it was something that was very easy to navigate and engaging. In particular, a lot of people really enjoyed the real stories for the reasons that we've mentioned in relation to normalizing their responses and feeling connected to others. People really liked the exercises, but different people chose different things. And, as David outlined, we tried to present the material in a very kind of a clear, bite-sized way as well, because many people just didn't really have the energy or the cognitive capacity to process a lot of information or to read too much text. So people liked, for example, we have some audio exercises like Leaves on the Stream, or some descriptions of using different types of metaphors. Some people, for example, really liked the mindfulness exercises that helped kind of develop present moment awareness. And this is important, especially in grief, where sometimes people are just reliving traumatic experiences, or I wasn't able to say goodbye, what happened at that last moment, or thinking ahead to the future. What am I going to do now? What am I going to do on holidays? What am I going to do at the anniversary? What am I even going to have tea tomorrow for just one person? Will I bother worrying about those aspects of your life that had changed? So those kind of mindfulness exercises, many people found those really helpful in helping them manage that kind of anxiety that comes following grief. People also enjoyed the psychoeducational aspects. As David mentioned, we kind of felt it was important to kind of focus on provide signposting to advice on nutrition and sleep, but actually partly just to help people recognize that these are normal responses. So it was not just in a psychoeducational or informational way, but these kind of advice linked in with some of the videos about kind of noticing, for instance, noticing your sleep patterns, recognizing that this is actually something that's quite common, and potentially then take some actions in relation to how you can kind of maybe support yourself in this. And, so encouraging people to think in a more focused kind of action-based way about how they could start to think about supporting themselves. So some people found that practical advice quite helpful, and other people, enjoyed the, poetry aspects, or just something that gave them a space for reflection and contemplation, and found that quite soothing. So we found that, so different elements were enjoyed by different people, and most people found that they would use the website, beyond the period of the research. They would come back to it in the future and they would recommend it to others. So we're very pleased with that. And as David said, we have some funding now to further develop the resource. And
Brilliant.
one of the things we'll be doing is to increase representation of kind of younger people who've been bereaved on the website. So we have kind of filmed some new footage of younger adults, and which we hope to integrate with some of our resources. And we'd also like to focus a little bit more about how grief evolves over time. So we've developed some extra material in relation to that. And we're looking into kind of other areas, such as David mentioned, a little bit about anticipatory grief or grief in the early stages. So it's still, although people have enjoyed the website, there was still suggestions for improvement and refinement. And with this extra funding from the ESRC, it's an impact acceleration grant, we're able to kind of continue to develop and improve the resource.
Wow, that's great to hear the impact and the continuing development. I'd like to climb up Arthur's seat and broadcast this website to the world because it's so useful. Listeners, you might gather that I'm a big fan of this website, and I think it should be used by organisations as a resource to direct people to as part of how they support their employees. My request now is there a takeaway you would offer the P-Supers to reflect on?
I think that what I would say to the P-Supers is that grief will come to everybody, and that it is a very normal human healing process, that it might feel really painful and it might feel hard work, and yet it is really a normal, healthy thing to allow those feelings in. If we don't get in our own way, we can get in our own way about allowing ourselves to heal. So that the takeaway I would have would be something like the timing of mygriefmyway.co.uk is really important. That some people early on just find it's too much, and that's completely understandable. But just know that it's there, and that there might come a time when you're ready to have a look at it later on down the line. On the other end of the spectrum, we had some people in our study who were bereaved 10, 15 years, and they still found benefit and significant movement through their grief even a long time after. So I would say it's like the timing is important and it's never too late, and that these skills can help you to do what is natural. It's a natural healing process, and this website supports your natural healing.
Lovely. Thank you very much, David. Anne, David, I'd just like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on the show and talking about this universal topic. I think the website is phenomenal. I'd encourage everyone, all the P-Supers, to go and have a look at it. And I'd love to get you back on the show once your next project about support for staff in the palliative care environments comes to fruition. So I'd like to put a marker there to say, would you be willing to come back? But thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Ross. I think I speak for both Anne and myself when we say we'd be delighted to come back and tell you more about Restore. But thank you for having us, and thanks for sharing the website with the P-Supers.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Anne.
Thank you so much, Ross. It's great to be here and really appreciate the time that you've given to having a look at the website and sharing your feedback on that too. So thanks so much.
That's it, folks. Part 3 of my chat with Anne and David in the bag. Please do check out mygriefmyway.co.uk. It really is a superb resource. You'll find the show notes for this episode at peoplesoup.captivate.fm or wherever you get your podcasts. If you like this episode, we'd love it if you told us why. You can email at peoplesoup.pod@gmail.com. On the socials, I'm still posting on Instagram at people.soup. And I'm on LinkedIn too, as well as a new account on Blue Sky. Just search for my name. Now more than ever, you can help me reach more people with the special People Soup ingredients, stuff that could be really useful for them. So please do share, subscribe, rate and review. Thanks to Andy Glenn for his spoon magic and Alex Engelberg for his vocals. But most of all, dear listener, thanks to you. Look after yourselves, pea soupers, and bye for now.
Yeah, for me, made me feel really comfortable, Ross. So I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Anne. I loved chatting to you, and you're a natural at this.